Chapter 52, Hail Mary. Drake and the May-Khan reach the foot of the ancient palace. Here they are met with Abaddon's sternest defenses, the legions of undead surrounding the palace wielding the Aether Knight weapons the Planetary Guard once used, as well as the Knight's former armaments. This is by far the heaviest resistance Drake and the May-Khan have met thus far, but this barely slows them down. The May-Khan make their way up the steps and push into the palace complex, encircling the main hall in a flanking maneuver so Abaddon cannot escape. Drake marches through the chaos and grasps the hilt of his sword as he stomps towards the main hall's entrance, when suddenly he hears the screaming of the wind lance overhead, accelerating downward on the main hall. Drake hops to cover like a cat as the wind lance unleashes a nuclear salvo on the main hall of the palace complex, leveling the front wall. The wind lance then circles back around and speeds up on its dive. Like a roaring blur, Andrew whips past Drake as he flies the wind lance into the grand hall directly at Abaddon sitting before the dilapidated throne. Andrew, on seeing Abaddon, pushes down on the throttle till it has no more to give and yells at the top of his lungs in anger as he bullets at the king of the undead. Abaddon doesn't flinch and remains seated. As the wind lance crashes down on Abaddon, it suddenly and immediately stops. This breaks Andrew's arms, but he is not ejected from the aircraft. Andrew peers over the controls of the wind lance and sees Abaddon is now on his feet as he holds the wind lance in one hand, grasping it by the muzzle on the slide of one of its guns. Abaddon has his Titan blade axe, Skybreaker, in his offhand. The wind lance engine stalls out, and Abaddon holds it and Andrew in suspension, still by one hand. Abaddon, it is only a matter of time. The key has already been turned. Abaddon points with his axe at the precursor structure far off the horizon, visible through a collapsed wall section. The precursor structure then lights up with a blinding flash. Abaddon, you have maybe 20 minutes. The chain-fed clips on the wind lance forward gun ping, indicating they are ready to be charged. Since Aether Knight weapons throw the slide forward, they can be pushed back to charge the weapons. Abaddon happened to be holding the gun by the end of the slide. Andrew's arms snap back into place, and in a blink of an eye he reignites the engines and throttles down, pushing the wind lance forward, and the gun slides back, charging the guns. The wind lance is now ready to unleash a salvo on Abaddon at point blank, and that's exactly what Andrew does. From an aerial view of the palace, the back wall is blown out by a hail of explosions. The wind lance emerges from the smoke plume, with Andrew throttling down and up into the sky, while Abaddon's burning skeleton is mangled between the massive Aether Knight guns. Abaddon's molting skeleton clings to his axe as the wind lance disappears into the clouds. Rhea and her squadron make another pass over the palace when their formation is annihilated. Those who can pull their cords and eject over the palace slowly descend into the bullet storm below. The May-Khan around the palace starts to fall left and right as their armor has been worn thin by this point in the battle, and the Knight's howitzers the undead had commandeered do not help the predicament and do a number on the Lycans. The leader of the May-Khan looks down at his wrist, where he wears a GPS tracker pinged to the antimatter container. The May-Khan leader sees the beeping red dot disappear from the map. The May-Khan leader removes his helmet and lets out a howl to signal to the rest of the May-Khan. One by one, the May-Khan begin to pull a ripcord on their shoulders. Once a ripcord has been pulled, a grenade ejects from the back of their armor, which implodes and opens a rift that sucks them off their feet into the portal behind them. One by one, the May-Khan disappear. Drake is angered at the sight and yells at the top of his lungs, "Cowards!" One of the May-Khan, before pulling its cord, sees Rhea drift down from the sky. This May-Khan leaps into the sky and catches Rhea. Without missing a second, the May-Khan pulls its ripcord. As it falls back to the ground, a heavy artillery round hits it as it falls through its portal. On the other side of the portal is a padded wall inside the iron jacket. The May-Khan lays with its mouth open, tongue against the ground, and eyes lifeless. Its arm folds out, and unharmed Rhea rolls out of its grasp onto the floor. The leader of the May-Khan waits for all his soldiers to escape before pulling his cord. While he is waiting, a platoon of undead soldiers ram the spiked muzzle of a knight's howitzer into his knee and then fires, caving it back. He roars, extends his flaming claws, and discombobulates the undead latched onto the gun with one sweeping motion. Nar-Rokan then pulls his ripcord. Instead of being taken to a padded room, the leader of the Mycon is teleported to the main bridge of the Iron Jacket. Here, Hannibal overlooks the battle, and Adrestia sits in a rigged-up VR metal chair that lets her control the vessel telepathically. Hannibal to Nar-Rokan. What happened out there? Why are you back? Do you have the antimatter? Nar-Rokan. We could not. Plan B, unleash the left hand of God. Hannibal radios in all his pilots. Code 490, return immediately. We're pulling out. Rhea is standing at the entrance of the bridge. Rhea, what is the left hand of God? The wind lance continues to barrel up into the sky. Andrew reaches for his Titan blade and a halo forms above his head. He draws the blade and swings it down on Abaddon's charred remains, but he is not quick enough. Abaddon jumps awake and catches Andrew by the wrist before he can complete the swing. With a quick sleight of hand, Andrew sets the wind lance to autopilot using his free hand with a set trajectory upperwards. Andrew then grabs the custody arm off his back, swings, and fires it at Abaddon. Abaddon leans forward, dodging the swing by a hair but frees Andrew's left hand, although Abaddon quickly follows up with a swing at Andrew with his axe. They go back and forth, swinging at each other and leaning out of the way of the other's swing just by a hair, over and over, like they were matched in superhuman speed. The roar of their Titan blade sounded like thunder with each swing and attempted stab by Andrew. Frost begins accumulating on the two of them, and the wind lance as they reach the edge of the atmosphere. The wind lance slowly spirals as it climbs fast. They reach the edge of space when finally their Titan blades collide, causing a sonic boom-like phenomenon. At this time, gravity disappears, and both men drift apart as the wind lance seems to float in place. For a split second, it was like time had frozen. Andrew peers over Abaddon's shoulder and sees the entire brunt of the ROF's armada over Aurora. Countless vessels, all with their guns pointed downward at the surface of his home, ready to unleash a worldwide nuclear bombardment. Abaddon reaches over, grabs the reins of the wind lance, and points it straight down at the planet with full thrust. Gravity quickly sets back in as the clouds rapidly approach. Andrew lets go of his Titan blade and custody arm and latches to the wind lance so he is not thrown off. He tries to wrestle the controls from Abaddon, but before Andrew can make any headway, Abaddon initiates the jump engine. Andrew has 3 seconds to stop the wind lance from going 1/8 the speed of light into the world's surface. Abaddon lets go of the wind lance controls, but this is bait. As Andrew leans forward to disengage the jump engine, Abaddon takes a swing at Andrew, forcing Andrew to lean out of the way. Andrew notices the antimatter container hanging on Abaddon's side. He snatches it off Abaddon. Although Andrew had just missed his window to turn off the jump engine, he managed to let go of the wind lance, but was not quick enough. It disappears like a bolt of lightning and takes his legs from the knees down with it. Instantly, a cataclysmic explosion erupts miles below him, where the wind lance had made an impact, Abaddon with it. Andrew tumbles through the air while his halved legs spew fire. After Andrew breaks the cloud cover, he is hit with a steady stream of flak rounds, trying to separate him from the antimatter until he craters the ground himself.